and welcome back to When Hope Endures with Wesley and Mabel. Today we continue Mabel's story, talk about rehab. This is a part of the story where she has a bit more memory than she did in the ICU as well as the acute care. So it'll be nice because she knows a lot more of what was happening there. And we, after acute care, they said, well, we want to send her to a in-house rehab for at least a couple weeks. But they had to wait for the insurance to approve that, make sure they were going to approve in-house as opposed to sending her home and then having to take her there regularly. Once we got the approval, then they moved you to the rehabilitation center there of the U of U hospital.
Yep. I remember that my mom came when they were gonna transfer me to the other rooms.
So that was the funny part is with each of the room transfers, I was not there on those days. When they transferred you from the neurointensive care unit to acute care, your friend was there with you on that day.
Okay.
And then when they transferred you from acute care over to rehabilitation, I also was not with you that day. Your mom was there.
Yeah.
I remember one of the doctors, because the doctors came up to meet you, the ones that were working there in rehabilitation. And we had the doctor that we'll be talking a little more in detail about later. But then there was also a Dr. Provo. And I remember you telling me, you're like, well, this doctor, I can't remember his name. But it's like a city. It's like Dr. Layton or something. And so after that, we would call him, well, amongst ourselves, not to him, but we'd call him Dr. Layton because of that. Because we couldn't think of Provo.
Yep. But there was a lot of other doctors. I don't remember very well, like, their names. But it was, before that one, there was another one. And then he was the one that took over the other doctor. But I don't remember his name. Anyway. I remember transferring and I wanted my kids, or they made some pictures.
Right.
For the doctors at the other place.
Yeah, for the nurses and the doctors saying thank you for taking care of my mom and drawing them some pictures.
Yeah. I don't know what happened to those pictures. I think I still brought them, but they didn't keep them, but at least they saw it.
Yeah, they had them hung up there for a day or two, and then I believe when they transferred you, your mom brought the papers.
Them. Yeah.
So I believe we still have them in your book here, a book of a few things of memory.
Yeah. I also remember when we got there, what's the name of the center? Nielsen? No.
Craig B. Nielsen or Craig something Nielsen Rehabilitation Center.
When we got there, it was like so fancy.
Like a 5-star hotel.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, it was state of the art. I mean, it was recently built, and it was at that time one of the top places, most advanced rehabilitation centers in the world.
They have a thing on the roof, well, ceiling, not the roof, on the ceiling, where if they needed to transport patients, they would only hook them onto this rail thingy and just transfer the patient. And then the lights almost were like you clap and they will turn off.
Yep.
And same with the curtains or the blinds. They came up just by pushing a button.
And they had like a program like you could choose how much light you wanted, and it would adjust the curtains accordingly and everything.
Yeah, it was so fancy. And I remember that, which is a good thing, because with the stroke and everything, they didn't know how was my sense of like cleaning myself, like, you know, like showering and like brushing my teeth and making sure that I was ready for the day. And every morning they would wake me up, because like we said before, I had to wake every 2 to 3 hours. And
to take the huge pill.
Yeah. And so they woke me up to eat breakfast. And before the stroke, and never we have had like a set time for breakfast, lunch, dinner. And here they made me have it, because I was like, okay, but I don't have time for this. And they would make me have my lunch and breakfast and dinner time.
Well, you had a pretty full schedule. It was like going to a university or a school or something, right? They had like, at this hour you have this, at this hour you have that. This hour is physical therapy, this one's occupational therapy, this hour is speech therapy, this hour going with the psychologist. Again, you have speech therapy again at this hour, and so it was like pretty booked all day long.
And I wanted to rest, but they didn't let me rest, which is okay, because they didn't want people to start becoming lazy, right? They want people to improve as fast as they can. And my mom, I remember, she would be like, what are they doing? You just had a stroke. Why are they putting you to work so hard?
This is too much for you.
This is too much for you. And I was like, I know, but I think one day was the day that I'm like, I'm not gonna do this right now. But then they kept insisting, like, you still had to do this, you still had to get up, you still had to walk, you still had to go to occupational therapy and things like that. And I remember going to these rooms that had huge TVs, and then they had the letters and numbers all scattered. And then I had to look for the letter and click on, like, tap the letter or the number. But it was like 1A, 2B. Like, I had to go like that with number and letter after. And then they saw that I could do it. Then they put me to do it, like, with one foot, you know, like single leg, and sometimes I would not find them. I'm like, I can't find this, and they would always remind me, okay, scan the whole thing.
Because
this other half of the board.
Because with that right vision cut, everything would end right there.
Yeah. Well,
it would seem to continue on, but so you wouldn't think to look for something else.
Yeah, it would seem to continue on, but up to the vision that I could see, you know? Like, it wasn't, there was nothing existent after that.
Right.
Until I turned my head and I'm like, oh, there is this thing. So, still happens sometimes. But, that was the time that I went to those TVs. Then I had physical therapy. We would do like, well, first, since I just had the baby, they didn't want me to be working out to done.
Right, because you were still in the recovery of the
baby and
weeks or whatever after having a
Mhm.
baby.
Yeah, so they're like, okay, you can do like bird dogs or whatever, but then um I don't know what would happen. Probably I would say no. I don't know. And so they would send me walking every single
Mm-hmm.
day. That was my rehab. It was walking, and um it was kind of cold still.
With your physical therapist, you guys, if it was too cold outside, you'd walk around inside. But the days
Mhm.
that it was nice, you would go out walking outside and
Yeah, my fashion was not the greatest.
well, you had very few things. Well,
I
let's
know.
talk about that a little bit. So, moving into rehab, you could actually wear clothes. Again, it was no
Mhm.
longer just the hospital gowns.
Yeah.
So you actually got to wear clothes, which was nice.
Yep.
Um, it was interesting that you brought up the breakfast portion, that they would make sure you ate breakfast at that time. And I knew what time you were eating breakfast because that was the time you would call me.
Mhm.
So when you were in acute care in the mornings, you would want to call me, but you'd have to have the nurses help you to call me.
Mhm.
And you wanted to try, but I would tell them, hey, keep the phone a little away from her because I didn't want you deleting stuff on there. But by the time you were in rehab, we were able to work and you were able to learn how to. You couldn't really read much what was going
Mhm.
on, but I think we even created like a button that was specific that you can call me straight
Mhm.
from there. But you learned how to unlock your phone and everything
Mhm.
in there so that you could at least have some ability, some uh what's the
When the
word? Autonomy without waiting for the nurses.
Yeah. Yep. So once I learned how to call you, I would be calling you all the time.
Yep. Um, another funny thing there, and we'll get back to the rehabs, but when you did need help with something, because you still couldn't get out of bed by yourself, you
Mhm.
you would have been fine, but they were worried about you falling, so you'd have to call them. And I remember whenever you'd press the button, it's like calling the care team. And you're like, it sounds like it says calling the Karen team.
Yeah.
So you're
Yeah.
like, yeah, I'm just calling the Karen team.
Yep. It was my caring team.
You told that to one of the nurses, and
He
he wasn't
didn't.
too amused. I don't think he got it. The guy was he was nice and everything, but I don't think he quite got it.
I'm like, oh yeah, I feel like it's a caring team. And he's like, okay. Oh, anyway, yeah.
So with
Yep.
physical therapy, you would go walking regularly.
Or we would do like this thing that you have a ball and then you toss it with this, I don't know, this thing like a like a
Like the
cup
ones the
type
kids would go
thing.
to play with at the park
Uh-huh.
that
Yeah.
has kind of the rounded area and you kind of
Yeah.
fling it and catch it
Uh-huh.
with that.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
So we tried that. And then there was this guy that was in therapy too, and he would always speak Spanish also. He would not speak English. And the nurses or the therapists were like, well, I don't know what you're saying. You gotta talk to me in English. And um he loved dancing. So uh he made the nurse, or not the nurses, the therapist dance with him because that's what he liked.
Mm-hmm.
And also I tried this thing because the other therapists, when my therapist wasn't there, they didn't know what to do with me.
Right.
And so um this guy therapist sent me to this machine where you it's like a treadmill,
Mm-hmm.
but it had like uh what is it called? Screen. Sharing the screen on the floor, well, on the treadmill, and you had to jump. Even though it was going, you had to
Mm-hmm.
jump to
Like over
like,
obstacles or something in there.
yeah, and like step on all the mushrooms or whatever it was.
Uh-huh.
And that was super fun. And meanwhile in there, I was thinking, I really should have been a physical therapist.
Well, because that's something you wanted to do.
That's something
right,
I
when you were
really
little.
wanted to do. And when I was there, I'm like, I wish I could work here. Like, it's so much fun, like, seeing all these people progressing. And then they sent me, well, we were walking, I would look at this treadmill, but it's in the water. Like, it's just like, it's not a pool, but it's just like a big tub. And in the water, and they would make him walk.
You really wanted to try that, but you weren't of the situation that you needed it, so they didn't let you try it.
Yep. And then also we went up and down the stairs. That was tricky, but I always wanted to use the stairs since my room, and we had to go down the stairs, and I said I need to use the stairs because I don't like elevators. And so sometimes we would use the elevators, but
it was tricky because with the vision and your balance and everything, you did good. You were able to walk, but the stairs, I felt like that's where your balance would be a little more of an issue.
Yeah, because I could not, like, I felt, and it happens still sometimes, but I felt like I was in a cloud. Like when a long time ago, when I was in high school, I fell and I passed out and I hit my head. And when I woke up, I told the teacher, I'm fine, even though I wasn't fine. And so it was the same. I was seeing all white. Like, I didn't see people. I couldn't see people or anything. So it's kind of a concussion, right?
Right.
So I would be like trying to balance from one side to the other in high school in the hallways of the hospital, because they sent me to the hospital, and saying, I'm fine. So, and I would see like cloudy, everything white. So that reminded me of the same. When I was in the hospital here and trying to go down the stairs or walking, it felt cloudy.
Right.
I had the balance, but I felt like I was gonna trip, even though I didn't trip. But I felt that cloudiness. And
you'd feel like you were losing balance even when you weren't. You're like, oh, I feel like I'm going forward, or I feel like the world is tipping to the side, trying to shake me off, even though you weren't showing any signs of losing balance.
And that still happens too. But it was very interesting because I just thought like if I was in a dream. And I didn't like that. And when one of the rehab days was these two girls, the physical therapist and the occupational therapist, got together and decided, okay, we're gonna try to make this harder. And they made me go to the gift shop.
Because up to that point with occupational therapy, they weren't sure of a lot of things of what to work with you, right? So
Mm-hmm.
they had asked you, what do you want to working on? What did you used to do? Oh, I used to dance. Did you used to play an instrument? And you're like, oh, no, I
Uh-huh.
didn't play an instrument. Um,
Yeah,
so
I
they weren't
told.
sure what to do with you. You're like, well, I used to clean the house,
Yeah.
and maybe we could work on vacuuming.
That's what
So
I said, yeah.
they worked on vacuuming with you, right?
Yeah, because I'm like, well, I want to make sure that I'm seeing everything. I still miss spots, but like, yeah, I told them, hey, I do Mexican dance, and
Uh-huh. But they couldn't really, they
yeah,
didn't know how to work without you on that.
yeah.
I remember one time we were with the physical therapist. Sorry, taking a quick tangent here. And she's like, so, do you guys want to practice dancing like we're outside? Should I put on some music? And we're like, oh, no, thank you. We're good.
Yep.
But trying to make it work. And then they did. So prior to them taking you to the gift shop, she was working with you on trying to order stuff
Well, I
online.
think that was after.
Oh, it was after?
Yeah, the
Okay.
gift shop was first. First, they made me gave me money.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know how much money it was. They're like, okay, we're gonna give you this money, and you're gonna go and order things from the store, and you're gonna, if you don't know anything or you don't know where it is, you're gonna ask. But it was hard for me to ask because I was in that process, right, that they taught me, like, if you don't know a word, you're gonna go around it.
Uh-huh. So it's speech therapy too, kind of
Uh-huh.
in there
Yeah.
as well. So you had
Yeah.
kind of all of it working together. And wasn't it like a card you had to get?
Yes, I had to get a birthday card
Yeah.
or something, or Mother's Day card or something like that. And I had to go look for those and read and see what it was about.
I don't even know what this card says, but
Yeah, I'm like, okay, but it looks like balloons, so it might have, like, and also like, they made me buy food, I think, and then I had to give him the money. But like the exact, not exact, but like the closest, right? Like,
you couldn't just be like, here you go, you counted.
yep. Even though that's what I tried afterward, and which we had to say that story in Maverick, something.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, when we get to the stories about being home, there's
Yeah.
quite a few to share.
but I didn't know what to do. I was just like, okay, here it is. I hope it is the right one. And I think they are like, okay, you need a little, like, $5 more or something like that. Like, remember those things?
You still didn't know your numbers that well. Like, you could get a few of them, but ocho was still your most dominant number. So counting wasn't coming easy to you. Addition, nothing there. And then reading, you were still kind of at the beginner level of reading things again. And so you had a lot of things, but they wanted to push you. They're like, we're going to get this girl back into
Reading,
life and everything.
So then after that, it was so taxing, which sounds silly, but it was like very, like, my brain was working really hard. And then they're like, okay, now you have to go to the pharmacy. So they sent me to the pharmacy to ask for medicine. And they had to help me in there too. Not the therapists. They couldn't, they were just outside waiting for me and see how I did. And I had to get myself to the world and ask them for help. And finally I did it. I got the stuff that they told me. So I don't know if it was right or not now that I don't remember, but yeah. I got that, and then that was the first time like getting out.
Mm-hmm.
That was because I think that was even before going outside to on a walk.
I thought you were walking outside prior to
Because
that.
it was cold too.
But it was your first time kind of being in, like, they took you to the other side of the hospital, like from rehab over to
Mm-hmm.
there where
Mm-hmm.
all that stuff was. Um,
Yeah.
and then there was another experience. So with the speech therapy, they would work on you about talking around things and everything. And we're trying to help you write stuff. And I remember you being so excited. Oh, I wrote my name and everything.
Yeah.
And then there was kind of a combination speech and occupational therapy where they took about
Oh,
5 or 6 of you stroke patients together and said, you guys are going to plan a meal
ugh,
together.
yes. And they were all like older people.
Yeah.
I was the youngest in there.
Right. And everybody else was older. And so they're like, okay, so what do we want to cook? And the first thing is, oh, a Bloody Mary. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
I don't think you should be drinking right now. The doctor recommended against it.
Yeah, I wasn't me. It
And
was the other people.
you
Yeah.
know the other people, you're right. And then, oh yeah, but I like this in a Bloody Mary. And that went on a whole 20-minute conversation
To
about
make a
all the
blood-
different stuff. And it was supposed to be making something else, like an actual dish. But they went into, oh, I like celery in my Bloody Mary. Oh, I don't like that. I like this. This whole
Yeah.
conversation.
And I was just listening to them like, okay.
And they asked at the beginning, okay, is there somebody willing to write this down? Because everybody there had some speech problems trying to remember things or couldn't read or write at that point. And so you raised your hand, very brave, right?
Yeah.
Because you
'Cause
didn't know
that
the
was
spelling or anything.
Yeah.
And then
I wish I had the paper, but I don't.
I think we do. We do.
Okay.
And then you got totally lost because here they're talking about, you're like, wait a minute, what am I supposed to be writing down? Because they're talking about what they like and don't in a Bloody Mary. Then they finally got on to what they were going to make. And I don't remember
I don't know, something with potatoes.
what it was. A goulash is what they wanted to make. And so it was your job to write down the ingredients and how to make it
Yeah.
and everything. And
Oh my gosh.
if we're going to be honest, if somebody were to read that paper, they would have no idea you're making goulash.
Yeah.
But it was to get you guys talking, and if you didn't know a word, you had to learn to talk around it. If you didn't know how to spell something, you had to figure out the best way to write it down.
Yeah, I have a lot of. Still, every time at my work now, like if it was somebody's birthday, I always write per day.
Mm-hmm.
And the B and the P are my worst. Instead of the B and the D, no, it's the B and the P.
Well, it's a different type of dyslexia, right? So the aphasia caused this, and so it's not really dyslexia, but it's very similar to somebody who has dyslexia and would do that.
Yeah. So then one day we did the ordering online. They're like, okay, you're gonna order a uniform for your kid. And it was like a super, or at least I thought at that point, the very, what's the word? Complicated website. Like, super complicated website. And you had to look for the socks and the shoes and the skirts and but she wants blue skirts, and then she wants like the white shirts and the size, and that was so stressful too, because like I said, it was just half of my
Yep.
I'm like, but it's not in here.
But there's
and
only
like,
2 items on here.
Yeah.
No, there's 4, 6, right?
And she's like, look around. And I'm like, oh, wait, there it is. And yeah, because I can only see half of the computer screen. But I learned to go around it. But
Mm-hmm.
if you tell me, hey, look for this and tell me what you want, I'm like, oh, but there's only this things, and they're like, no, there's some. Oh yeah, there is things over here, but yeah, I learned that was the more taxing one. I didn't want to learn the computer anymore.
Yeah, looking at the screen and trying to use a mouse and
Yeah,
a keyboard, it was...
it was horrible. Like I think that one was before I was like a very computer person, and
Mm-hmm.
now still like I don't like it.
Yeah, you still don't like looking at a screen for that long.
Yeah, but I I did that too.
It really was a lot like a school, right? Like they had, okay, you're going to do occupational therapy, and here you're going to be learning buying stuff or vacuuming or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And oh, well, it's speech therapy, so you're going to be learning more with that. And so
Yeah.
it was kind of cool how they had it structured,
Mm-hmm.
and they weren't going to take it easy on you. I mean, they had, we're like, okay, we have 2 or 3 weeks to work with her. We're going to make sure we get the most out of it with these 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah, they were tough. And sometimes, like, playing a game, I didn't want to play the game.
Mm-hmm.
But I had to play the game because I didn't want to read or I didn't want to do it, but I had to do it.
Uh-huh.
And I remember when, like, they didn't know what else to do. But at the same time, I wasn't, like, 100%, right? Like,
right.
But they didn't know how else to handle me.
Right. It was because you hadn't been home yet. You hadn't seen what you can or can't do at home, so it was really hard for them to assess what else you needed to learn. Mm-hmm. Right. And that was kind of the point, was let's get her to the point where we can send her home, and then she'll continue therapy at home and they can be more directed.
Yeah.
So it was interesting with you going back to physical therapy a little bit, because your physical movements were not affected by it, where some people, they'll have a stroke and they'll lose movement of their leg or arm. You didn't have that. You still had full strength in both areas.
Yeah, but I think they just wanted to make sure that I did have the full strength, and that if I didn't catch any, or they didn't catch something.
Yeah, they had to make sure they still did the physical therapy and everything with you, but they had to, what's the word? They had to kind of adjust it based off of that, because they're used to working, and a lot of the facility was made to work with the people who couldn't move as well.
And then also one time they made me, or they would always like ask me questions when I was walking, because they always wanted to make sure that they showed me pictures while walking to see if I knew what it was or what was wrong in that picture. Mm-hmm. And there was a picture of this table that had cooking
chicken or some type of meat.
Yeah, in the same what is it called? The
cutting board.
The same cutting board. It was chicken, like raw chicken, and on the side there were some carrots. And they're like, so what's wrong about this picture? And I'm like, nothing. And they're like, well, you should not be cooking carrot or cutting carrots in the same as the meat, the raw meat, or the raw chicken. And I'm like, well, but if you're gonna put it in the same pot.
I mean, if they cut the carrots beforehand, and then they're thrown in, like when you do a roast, you cook the carrots and potatoes in there. There's nothing wrong with that, right?
And I think that was the only thing that, well, there probably was more, but I don't remember. I just remember that one because I started laughing about it. And I was just too silly. I don't remember. I don't know, overly silly.
But being in rehab or rehabilitation, when you started to be a little more coherent, like I said, you could remember more from that than any of the other parts. That's when anxiety did tend to kick in a little bit more for you. Prior to that, you were just kind of constantly in this fight or flight status. And here, you're doing other things, and anxiety would kick in.
Yeah, so
So they had a psychologist on staff who would try to teach you about mindfulness and breathing and everything.
yeah, and also like they were like, okay, we give medicine to people like this, but we didn't know why, and I didn't want to be on medicine because before, like, a few years before, I was on medicine, and I did not. It was not good for me,
Right.
and so I didn't want to go through it again. And so I didn't want medicine, and we decided not to the medicine until later.
Right.
But apparently, like, we read that in a stroke.
They'll often give SSRIs to stroke patients, even if they're not
If they don't
struggling with the anxiety, because it has an effect that can help with the recovery or whatever with it. But I mean, it made sense. You had a type of PTSD with that. With the stroke, it's definitely a traumatic event, and you were afraid of a relapse, so you would worry, and then you would tend to get more worried about your heart than your head, though, when you were there.
Yes.
Because you'd feel you were laying down a lot. Now you were working. They had you on blood thinners and a lot of other things. And so you would often feel your heart going fast. And so you would tend to panic even more, which causes it to go faster.
Yeah. Yep.
I remember especially after they did the COVID vaccine for you as a patient, that caused the heart rate to go up, and then they had to do a whole bunch of tests and everything.
Yeah, and then, yeah, my heart started racing, and and it was like a couple days before they took off
the IV and
yes,
everything. Yep.
And then putting that IV again, everybody thought I was like crazy. I started crying and screaming like, no, I don't want this again. And
I was on the phone at 2 a.m. when that was all happening.
Yeah. And they sent me back to something, CT or something, I don't know.
Yeah, CT. They did the EKGs. They did all the different tests of the heart.
But I did not like that because I was starting to wake up from all this. So Mabel was coming back.
Right, the one that hates the needles and everything.
Yeah, like I don't know if I said it last time, but my needles, they did not hurt anything until the last day. I couldn't handle it anymore, and I was so afraid of putting needles on my stomach.
I think that's when, though, that you started to feel a little more, there's a comfort from the doctor, right? So it was around that time. So we had talked about a little bit about the doctor beforehand. When he was 27 in the middle of medical school, he had a stroke. And even all these years afterwards, he still doesn't have full movement back in part of his body. And you have to listen carefully because he's very intelligent, but the speech just doesn't come out always the way it's intended. I say very intelligent. He finished school. He's written a couple books and everything, and amazing guy. But from someone who's gone through that, and he came in and put his hand on your
feet.
And said it's going to be okay. I think that's when the peace, I think that helped your anxiety more than anything else, right? You felt a peace from him. And I think that kind of gave you more hope. And there were a couple times he would come in and
I know, I missed him every time he wouldn't come.
Right? Yeah, and so having it come from somebody who has been there, like, it means something a little bit more. Somebody who hasn't been through it, they tell you, oh, it's going to be all right. And you're like, how would you know? You know? But you could feel his compassion. You could feel his love. And it was calming and soothing.
Yeah, imagine what he had to learn, right? In order to be like this. Calm and really good.
I remember as well, they did a final MRI on you there.
Yeah.
And you were more, all the other MRIs you weren't awake for. This one you were awake, and so you don't want to listen to any music?
And it was Mexican music, because I told them, okay, maybe Spanish music, and they're like, okay. And it was the worst Spanish music, and I couldn't tell them to turn it off. And it was like 40 minutes of that, and I'm like, okay. But the weird thing is, every time I close my eyes, I didn't want to close my eyes. Maybe because I was afraid of falling asleep or whatever, right? I didn't want to close my eyes, because every time I close my eyes, I would see or imagine the people, like, in that hospital, all the nurses and all the doctors in there, like, from the past. Like, it would look kind of like a movie, a black and white movie. And it just feels super, super, like, scary to me. And it was a really long MRI.
And especially with that.
And they didn't give me medicine.
Music that wasn't that
Yeah.
great, right?
And they didn't give me medicine. Yeah. To calm myself down.
At that point, then it was, oh yeah, everything's good. And there were some good things there at the
like Brianna with
rehabilitation. Right. And so a couple things along that line with the rehabilitation. Yeah, it was like a 5-star hotel, right? But I had asked, can I bring the kids? And I'm like, well, no, because it's still one visitor at a time. It's still during the COVID time. I'm like, okay. So the kids, knowing they couldn't go, you would video chat with them every night. And we still have some of those videos saved of you sending them videos or video chatting. They wanted to do something for you. So for Easter, they got these little stuffed animals, little cutitos. And so they sent them all up there. They gave hugs to their stuffed animals and then sent them with me up to you so that you could have them there and give the stuffed animal hugs and feel the hugs from the kids there. We have a picture of you with the little cutitos. It was adorable. But the coolest part was, like you had mentioned, Brianna. So they were still keeping you pumping. I was still bringing milk home. By that time, your mom was there with us, and I had Brianna back at home for some time. Karina would take her sometimes. My sister would take her sometimes, and I would have her the other times because I really needed time with my new little baby as well, right? Have some bonding time. And I asked, is there any way she can come up here. I talked with the occupational therapist at that time. Wouldn't that be a good occupational therapy to have her change diapers, to have her learn to carry and feed the baby and everything? And so they went through the process of getting permission from the head nurse up there at the rehabilitation, so that we could have Brianna, our youngest, come up there.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember the first day that I was actually able to bring her there.
Yeah. I couldn't, like we said before, I was like, is this my baby? Like, I had no idea. And I would hold her, right?
Well, first time you held her, you started to cry.
Yeah.
A lot.
Yeah, I don't remember. But and I remember also, like, it came natural again, right? Like, changing her diapers and
feeding her. It was just like,
yeah,
didn't really have much learning to do.
Yeah. And I was holding her and just letting her sleep on my chest, and we went to walking, right, with them.
Mm-hmm. With the wrap. So you're able to wrap and have her in a wrap by you and go walking.
Yeah, they were very nervous about it.
Uh-huh.
But I did it, and we went Did we go outside walking with her? I think so.
I don't know if it was outside or not.
Yeah, I think we went outside too, one of the days, to walk with her.
Well, bringing her in was a little difficult because the front desk did not want me to let me bring her in. But they had to call and show that there was permission from the head nurse in order to let me bring her up to you.
Yeah. It was such a nice experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was really happy with that. That, yes, you couldn't see the other kids and you really missed them, but at least you could talk with them. With Brianna, it was a little more difficult. So being able to bring her in, at that time, she was about a month old, and still let you be able to hold her and feed her and change her diaper. I think that really, you could see a happiness come across to you, right? Mm-hmm. I think you started to feel that peace, that hope again, as to, oh yeah, this is what it feels like to have my kids and everything around me.
Yeah.
Because you were there by that time, about a month between all the different, between the ICU, the acute care, and then rehab by this time. You were there, yeah, almost a month. And all you knew were nurses and needles and pills. And, I mean, your husband, whether that was a plus or a minus there every day, right? But to have that love, I think, was a...
Yeah. I also remember your sister coming over and me trying to do puzzles, and she was like, okay, let's do puzzle together. And you gave me these puzzles that were super hard.
They were not super hard, but for you they were. Yeah. Right? But you had asked me to send you, because I said, is there anything you want me to bring you?
Yeah.
And you said, puzzles. Well, how about a puzzle?
Mm-hmm. It was super hard.
Right. And she's like, I don't think she's ready for this yet.
Yeah. But it was nice. It's kind of awkward because there's nothing to talk about, right? Because there was just staying in there.
Right.
But the last couple of days, they let me stand up and go to the bathroom by myself. Mm-hmm. I didn't have to call in, hey, I need to go to the bathroom, when I thought I could do it by myself.
And showering, if I was there, they let you shower. They would have let you shower by yourself, but you didn't know that. But as long as I was there, they would let you shower by yourself.
My hair, right? Like, I was so afraid of washing my hair. Mm-hmm. And they're like, okay, so you can shower your hair now. Like,
we're like, okay, we can smell you after being in bed for a couple months.
or a
No, a
month.
month, right? No,
And,
I doubt that.
but they just wanted me. They just wanted to make sure that I could shower my head,
Uh-huh.
and but I still had the staples. But then they took off the staples, and the last day I did shower my head
Mm-hmm.
too. But they made sure that I was showered every either night or in the morning, but I had to be showered before I went, which is a good thing.
Well, I think that tends to be one of the first things that goes, right? So a lot of
Because we thought
people, when they struggle, they could fall into self-neglect. And so they want to make sure that you're actually taking care of yourself and not
yeah,
fall into that.
yeah, and also like we had to do seat in the shower,
Mm-hmm.
but
Yeah,
that'll
we'll
be
talk about
another
that on the
episode.
going home.
Yeah.
But I feel like there was a lot of highlights there with the rehabilitation. We were on the home stretch. You were about ready to be able to go home, and next time we'll talk about you coming home to your kids and everything. And we're able to see the hope in the acute care and everything. There was like, okay, it was just day to day. Is she still gonna live? Is it gonna be this, that? Here we were seeing progress, and it was like, okay, she's gonna make it. She's coming home. And I think that gave us a lot more hope, and that gave you a lot of drive to really try. And you put forth a lot of effort in there, and they actually let you go about a half week early because your progression was
they couldn't do anything else.
Right, they couldn't do anything else. You progressed really fast.
Yeah, they're like, okay, you're gonna just go to your therapist at home and
yeah, the kids were expecting you to be there
after
the week
my birthday,
after,
kind of.
But we knew you were going home a little bit early, and we didn't tell the kids that it would be a surprise. And we'll talk a little more about that next time. We appreciate you guys joining us for this part of the story. And
thank you.
Tune in next week. Yes, thank you. Bye.
Bye.